Edit, you can't afford anything in this store, ma'am, so let's not waste each other's time. The words landed in the air like shattered glass. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. Even the soft instrumental music floating through Brooks' diamonds and fine jewelry suddenly felt distant beneath the weight of the insult. At exactly 2:17 p.m. on a bright Saturday afternoon in downtown Chicago, one sentence transformed a luxury showroom into a stage. Ethan Caldwell stood near the center display case with his arms folded across his tailored navy suit, confidence radiating from every movement. He wasn't whispering. He wanted people to hear him. Across from him stood Naomi Brooks, a 42-year-old black woman wearing dark jeans, white sneakers, and a simple charcoal sweater. No designer logos. No visible jewelry. No security detail. Nothing about her appearance matched the image Ethan had in mind when he imagined wealthy customers. Naomi didn't react immediately. She simply looked at him. Calm. Silent. Composed. Around them, sparkling diamond necklaces rested beneath crystal glass displays. Spotlights reflected across polished marble floors. Wealth seemed to glow from every corner of the showroom. Yet all eyes were no longer on the jewelry. They were on Naomi. A white couple browsing engagement rings exchanged uncomfortable glances. A businessman standing near the watch collection slowly lowered his phone. Two sales associates stopped arranging velvet display trays and looked toward Ethan, waiting to see what would happen next. Ethan stepped closer. I'm serious, he said. This collection starts at $15,000. We have other stores around the city that might be a better fit. The message was clear. He wasn't talking about jewelry. He was talking about her. Naomi's expression never changed. She glanced briefly toward the diamond necklace she had been examining moments earlier. Then she looked back at Ethan. I asked to see the new collection, she said evenly. That's all. Ethan laughed softly. Not because anything was funny. Because he believed he had the power to decide who belonged and who didn't. And I'm telling you this isn't a museum, he replied. People don't come in here just to look. The tension tightened like a wire. A young sales associate named Emily Carter stood near the register, her stomach sinking. Something about the woman felt familiar. Not her clothes. Not her voice. Something else. Something she couldn't place. Ethan pointed toward the front entrance. If you're not planning to buy, I need you to stop handling the merchandise. Naomi slowly returned the necklace to its display stand. Her movements were careful, controlled, deliberate. The kind of control that came from experience. The kind that often made arrogant people underestimate who they were dealing with. The store wasn't quiet anymore. It was watching, waiting. Ethan mistook her silence for defeat. Naomi simply reached into her pocket and unlocked her phone. No anger, no argument. Just one brief glance at the screen before slipping it back into her sweater. Emily noticed the movement. She also noticed something else. On a monitor behind the register, a notification had just appeared inside the store management system. One name flashed across the screen for less than a second before disappearing. Emily's eyes widened. And suddenly, she wasn't worried about Naomi. She was worried about Ethan. Emily stared at the monitor long after the notification disappeared. She wondered if she had imagined it. The showroom lights reflected across the screen, making it difficult to tell exactly what she had seen, but one detail refused to leave her mind. The last name, Brooks. It was there for a fraction of a second before the system refreshed itself. Across the showroom, Naomi remained perfectly calm. She moved toward another display case filled with diamond bracelets and rare gemstone pieces recently added to the seasonal collection. She was not wandering aimlessly. She examined each piece carefully, reading descriptions, observing presentation standards, and occasionally glancing toward employees interacting with customers. It looked less like shopping and more like evaluation. Ethan, however, interpreted everything through the lens of his own assumptions. He followed several yards behind her, never fully leaving her sight. Every few minutes he exchanged looks with the sales staff. Those looks carried instructions without words. Watch her. Stay close. Do not trust her. Naomi noticed every one of them. A wealthy couple entered the showroom through the front doors. The husband wore a tailored gray suit while his wife carried a designer handbag that immediately caught Ethan's attention. His entire posture changed. The tension vanished from his face. His smile appeared instantly. Within seconds, he greeted them warmly and personally escorted them toward a private consultation area. Naomi watched the transformation happen in real time. One customer received suspicion. Another received respect. The difference had nothing to do with behavior. Emily felt increasingly uncomfortable. She had worked at the store for almost 3 years. She had seen difficult customers. She had seen security concerns. This felt different. Naomi had not raised her voice. She had not violated any policy. She had simply walked into a jewelry store and asked to see merchandise. Yet Ethan treated her as though she were a problem that needed to be managed. Naomi stopped beside a display featuring rare yellow diamonds. A younger associate approached with a rehearsed smile. "Can I help you find something?" he asked. Before Naomi could answer, Ethan appeared beside them. "I have this handled," he said. The associate immediately stepped back. Naomi looked directly at Ethan. "Handled?" she asked calmly. Ethan forced a smile. "I am simply making sure everyone receives appropriate service." The words sounded professional. The meaning underneath them did not. Naomi nodded slowly. "Interesting." Ethan folded his hands in front of him. "If you are looking for entry-level pieces, we have some options in the front section." Naomi glanced toward the area he indicated. Those displays contained the least expensive items in the building. Ethan assumed she would not notice. He assumed many things. The showroom felt smaller now. Customers sensed the tension even when they pretended not to. Conversations became quieter. Employees became cautious. Emily finally opened the employee database on her terminal. Her pulse quickened. She entered one name: Naomi Brooks. The loading icon spun for a moment. Then a profile appeared. Emily's eyes widened. Her breath caught in her throat. She immediately looked across the showroom toward Naomi. Suddenly everything made sense. The calmness. The confidence. The way she observed every detail instead of reacting. Naomi was not visiting the store. She was inspecting it. And Ethan Caldwell had absolutely no idea whose judgment was already being formed about him. Emily's heart pounded as she stared at the owner profile on her screen. The photograph matched perfectly. The name matched perfectly. The authorization level displayed at the top of the page left absolutely no room for doubt. Naomi Brooks was not simply connected to the company. She was the company. Emily looked up again and watched as Ethan continued walking through the showroom with the confidence of a man who believed he was completely in control. The irony was almost unbearable. Across the store, Naomi remained focused on the displays. She moved slowly from one collection to another, studying presentation details, product placement, cleanliness standards, and employee interactions. Every observation seemed deliberate. Every glance appeared calculated. Yet Ethan interpreted her silence as weakness. A few moments later, another customer entered through the front doors. She was an elderly woman dressed casually in a light blue jacket and comfortable walking shoes. Ethan barely acknowledged her arrival. Instead, his attention remained fixed on Naomi. He whispered something to one of the associates near the diamond section. The employee nodded and immediately repositioned himself closer to Naomi's location. The pattern was becoming obvious. Naomi was being watched. The store still looked elegant. Crystal lighting sparkled across the showcases. Soft music drifted through the room. But beneath the polished surface, tension spread quietly through the air. Then something unexpected happened. A customer near the center display suddenly frowned and looked around. "Excuse me," he said. "I cannot find the sapphire ring I was looking at a few minutes ago." Several employees glanced toward the display. The ring was gone. It was not an expensive mistake. It was a very expensive mistake. Ethan reacted instantly. His head turned. His eyes landed on Naomi. The silence that followed felt heavy. Naomi noticed it immediately. So did Emily. The customer looked confused rather than upset, but Ethan seemed eager to reach a conclusion. "Interesting," he muttered. The word was quiet, but several nearby customers heard it. Naomi slowly turned toward him. "Is there a problem?" she asked. Ethan forced a professional smile that did not reach his eyes. "We are simply locating an item." Naomi nodded once. "Then I hope you find it." Instead of returning to the search, Ethan continued looking at her. The accusation remained unspoken, yet everyone could feel it. Emily felt her stomach tighten. She had seen inventory mistakes before. Items were moved constantly between displays, private consultations, and cleaning stations. Missing did not mean stolen. Ethan knew that. Yet he seemed almost disappointed that he lacked evidence for the story forming in his head. Another employee approached and quietly informed him that the ring had not been checked out through any sales process. Ethan's expression hardened. Naomi remained perfectly composed. She adjusted her position beside the display case and continued examining a collection of emerald pieces as though nothing unusual was happening. That calmness seemed to frustrate Ethan even more. He wanted a reaction. He wanted discomfort. He wanted confirmation of his assumptions. Instead, he found none. Then a voice came through the showroom communication system from the inventory office. Item located, someone announced. The sapphire ring was transferred to consultation room 2:30 minutes ago. Relief spread across several faces. The customer laughed nervously. The mystery was solved. But Ethan never apologized for the suspicion that had silently filled the room. Naomi simply looked at him for a moment. Long enough for the message to land. Long enough for Ethan to realize she had noticed everything. And somewhere deep inside, for the first time that afternoon, uncertainty began creeping into his confidence. Uncertainty lingered in Ethan's eyes for only a moment before pride pushed it away. He straightened his jacket and resumed walking through the showroom as though nothing had happened. The customers returned to their conversations. The missing ring had been found. The suspicion should have ended there. It did not. Naomi continued moving through the store with the same measured pace she had maintained since entering. She stopped near a display featuring a newly released collection of custom-cut diamonds. The lighting above the case cast tiny reflections across the glass like stars suspended in place. Naomi studied the arrangement carefully. One bracelet sat slightly out of alignment. A display card contained a minor formatting error. A spotlight was aimed a few inches too high. Small details, the kind most people never noticed. Emily noticed Naomi noticing them. From behind the register, she could barely focus on her work. The owner profile remained open on her screen. Every line confirmed the same reality. Founder, Chief Executive Officer, Majority Owner. Naomi Brooks had built the company from the ground up. Yet the woman who signed every paycheck in the building was currently being treated like an unwanted visitor. Emily looked toward Ethan. She looked back at the screen. Then she made a decision. Her pulse quickened as she stepped away from the register and quietly approached Naomi. "Ma'am," she said softly. Naomi turned. Her expression remained calm. "Yes." Emily lowered her voice. "I think there has been a misunderstanding." Naomi studied her for a second. "You think?" Emily swallowed. "I know who you are." For the first time all afternoon, a faint smile touched Naomi's face. Not a smile of surprise. A smile of confirmation. "Do you?" Naomi asked. Emily nodded carefully. "I checked the system." Naomi glanced briefly across the showroom toward Ethan. He was busy speaking with another customer and had not noticed their conversation. "And what did you find?" Naomi asked. Emily hesitated. "I found that none of this should be happening." The words hung between them. Honest. Unfiltered. Naomi looked at the young employee for a moment. She saw nervousness. She saw integrity. Most importantly, she saw someone struggling between comfort and conscience. "Thank you," Naomi said quietly. Emily released a breath she did not realize she had been holding. Then a voice cut through the room. "Emily." Ethan's tone was sharp enough to stop movement across several departments. Emily turned. Ethan was already walking toward them. His expression darkened as he noticed who she was speaking with. "What exactly are you doing?" he asked. Emily felt every eye in the store shift toward her. "Helping a customer," she replied. Ethan's jaw tightened. "I did not ask for help." Naomi remained silent. Ethan looked directly at Emily. "Return to your station." The atmosphere changed instantly. Customers sensed it. Employees sensed it. The showroom no longer felt like a luxury store. It felt like a test. Emily slowly nodded, but before she stepped away, she looked at Naomi one final time. The message passed without words. She knew the truth. Naomi knew she knew. And somewhere beneath Ethan's confidence, a crack had begun to form. Because for the first time that afternoon, there was now a witness who could no longer pretend she had seen nothing. The showroom seemed brighter than before, yet the atmosphere felt heavier. Every polished surface reflected tension now. Every conversation carried an edge. Ethan sensed the shift even if he refused to acknowledge it. Customers had begun watching him as much as they watched the jewelry. Employees spoke more carefully. The room itself felt aware. Naomi remained near the center collection, studying a diamond bracelet displayed on a black velvet stand. The piece featured a row of perfectly matched stones that caught the light with every slight movement. She lifted it carefully for a closer look. The bracelet was beautiful, The workmanship was exceptional. It represented the standards she had spent years building. Then Ethan walked directly toward her. His pace was quick. His expression was tight. The distance between them disappeared in seconds. Without asking, he reached for the bracelet. "That is enough," he said. His voice was loud enough for nearby customers to hear. Naomi looked up slowly. Ethan removed the bracelet from her hands and returned it to the display. "These pieces are not for casual handling," he continued. Several customers exchanged uncomfortable glances. Naomi stared at him for a moment. The insult was no longer hidden beneath polite language. It was standing in the open now. Ethan folded his arms. "People come in here every week pretending they belong in places they cannot afford." The words landed harder than he intended, or perhaps exactly as he intended. The room went silent. Emily froze near the register. Another associate looked down at the floor. A customer standing near the engagement collection quietly shook his head. Naomi did not respond immediately. She simply stood there, still, composed. Yet somewhere deep inside, an old memory stirred. Suddenly she was 16 years old again. A small jewelry store outside Charlotte. Sunday clothes. Carefully saved allowance money. Dreams much larger than her bank account. She remembered stepping inside and asking to see a necklace displayed in the front window. She remembered the clerk's smile disappearing the moment she approached. She remembered being watched from aisle to aisle. She remembered being asked if she was lost. The humiliation had followed her all the way home that day. Not because of what was said, because of what was assumed. The memory faded as quickly as it arrived. Naomi returned to the present. The showroom. The diamonds. The manager standing in front of her. Different year. Different city. Same assumption. Ethan mistook her silence once again. "I think it is time for you to leave," he said. A few customers looked shocked. One woman actually took a step backward. Emily felt her pulse racing. Every instinct told her to speak. Every fear told her not to. Naomi finally reached into her pocket and removed her phone. Ethan laughed softly. "Calling someone to complain will not change anything." Naomi unlocked the screen. Her expression never changed. "No," she said calmly. "It will not." She selected a contact and pressed call. The line connected almost instantly. "Sophia," Naomi said. "Please activate Protocol Diamond." There was a brief pause. Then a professional voice answered. "Understood. Activating now." Naomi ended the call. Ethan frowned. "What exactly is Protocol Diamond?" Naomi slipped the phone back into her pocket. Her eyes met his. Calm. Certain. Unshaken. "You are about to find out." And somewhere beyond the showroom floor, systems were already beginning to move. For the first few seconds, nothing appeared to happen. The showroom remained exactly as it had been. Customers stood near the display cases. Associates moved carefully between consultations. The soft music continued drifting through hidden speakers. Yet Naomi knew better. Systems rarely announced themselves when they started moving. They simply moved. Ethan looked around the room with a smug expression. "That is what I thought," he said. A mysterious phone call, and nothing changes. Naomi did not answer. She glanced toward a nearby display and adjusted a bracelet that sat slightly crooked beneath the glass. The gesture seemed insignificant, but it unsettled Ethan. He expected anger. He expected embarrassment. Instead, she acted like someone who had all the time in the world. Across the showroom, Emily returned to her terminal. Her screen suddenly refreshed without warning. A notification banner appeared at the top of the system. Then another. Then a third. Internal review activated. Executive audit initiated. Regional oversight connected. Emily stared at the messages. Her pulse quickened. Protocol Diamond was real. Very real. A few feet away, another employee frowned at his own terminal. "That is strange," he murmured. Several system windows were now locked. Reporting tools were opening automatically. Store performance metrics appeared on screens that normally remained hidden from employees. Ethan noticed the unusual activity. "What is going on?" he asked sharply. Nobody answered immediately because nobody knew. The atmosphere inside the showroom shifted again. Customers sensed it. Employees sensed it. The room no longer felt tense. It felt expectant. Then Ethan's work phone vibrated. Once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. He pulled it from his pocket and looked down. The confidence in his face flickered. Multiple incoming messages. Regional operations. Human resources. Corporate compliance. His eyes narrowed. He quickly locked the screen before anyone else could see it. Naomi noticed. She noticed everything. Bad timing, she asked calmly. Ethan forced a laugh. Corporate messages. Nothing important. Naomi nodded slightly. Of course. The words carried enough weight to make him uncomfortable. At the front of the showroom, two customers quietly discussed what they had witnessed over the past 20 minutes. One of them shook his head. I have never seen a manager follow someone around like that. Another customer agreed. The conversations were no longer private. The store itself seemed to be forming an opinion. Ethan heard the whispers. So did the staff. Emily watched as another notification appeared on her monitor. Executive access verified. Owner observation active. Her eyes widened. The words remained visible for only a moment before disappearing again. But they were enough. She looked across the room toward Naomi. The realization settled deeper than before. Naomi had never been reacting to the situation. She had been documenting it, measuring it, evaluating it. Every word, every decision, every assumption. Ethan's phone vibrated again. This time the sound seemed louder than the music, louder than the conversations, louder than his confidence. He looked at the screen and immediately went pale. The message contained only 6 words. Regional Director arriving in 4 minutes. For the first time that afternoon, Ethan stopped talking. And for the first time that afternoon, Naomi smiled. The smile lasted only a second, but it changed everything. Naomi did not smile out of satisfaction. She smiled because the moment she had been waiting for had finally arrived. Ethan stood frozen near the center display while the weight of the message settled over him. Regional Director arriving in 4 minutes. 4 minutes suddenly felt very short. The showroom was no longer operating on his timeline. It was operating on someone else's. Customers sensed the shift immediately. Conversations grew quieter. Employees checked their terminals more often than usual. Even the soft music drifting through the speakers felt distant now. Ethan cleared his throat and attempted to regain control. Everyone back to work, he said. The words lacked their earlier authority. Nobody moved very quickly. Naomi calmly walked toward the central consultation area and took a seat beside a display containing rare pink diamonds. She looked completely at ease. That calmness unsettled Ethan more than any argument ever could. A few moments later, the front doors opened. A tall woman in a charcoal business suit entered the showroom carrying a tablet. Her pace was quick, purposeful, professional. Several employees immediately recognized her. Rachel Monroe, Regional Director for the entire Midwest Division. The room seemed to hold its breath. Rachel did not stop at the register. She did not greet the staff. She walked directly toward Naomi. Ethan's face drained of color. Emily watched from across the room, barely blinking. Rachel reached Naomi and offered a respectful nod. Good afternoon, Ms. Brooks. The words echoed through the showroom like a bell. Customers looked up. Associates stopped moving. Ethan stood perfectly still. Naomi rose from her chair. Good afternoon, Rachel. Rachel handed her the tablet. The audit team is connected. Compliance has reviewed the initial reports. Human Resources is standing by. Naomi accepted the device. Around them, confusion spread across faces throughout the showroom. Then realization followed. Naomi turned slowly toward Ethan. The silence became enormous. It filled every corner of the store, every display case, every polished floor tile, every reflection. Ethan attempted a nervous smile. Ms. Brooks. Naomi met his eyes. Her voice remained calm. It did not need volume. The truth carried enough weight on its own. You denied service to the woman who built this company. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Naomi continued. You followed me through this store. You questioned whether I belonged here. You assumed I could not afford the products displayed inside a company I spent 20 years building. Ethan opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Naomi took another step forward. You accused me of pretending to belong in a place that exists because of my work. Across the showroom, customers stared in disbelief. One associate covered her mouth. Another slowly lowered a clipboard. Emily felt a rush of relief she could barely explain. The truth was finally standing in the open. Naomi's gaze never left Ethan. You call me a problem. You call me a waste of time. You treated me like an outsider in the company whose name appears on every paycheck you receive. The silence became absolute. Ethan looked smaller now. Not physically, professionally, morally. The confidence that had filled the showroom all afternoon had vanished completely. Rachel glanced at her tablet. Additional notifications were arriving every few seconds. Compliance findings. Employee statements. System logs. The evidence was still growing. Naomi accepted the tablet and reviewed the screen for a moment. Then she looked back up. Her expression remained calm. But the next words would change everything. The showroom remained frozen as Naomi lowered the tablet and looked around the room. No one seemed willing to break the silence. The diamonds sparkled beneath the lights exactly as they had an hour earlier, yet the entire atmosphere had changed. What had begun as a routine afternoon now felt like a public reckoning. Rachel stepped beside Naomi and opened another report on the screen. Compliance completed the initial review, she said. Her voice was professional, clear, impossible to misinterpret. Security footage, employee activity logs, customer observations, and system records all support the same conclusion. Ethan swallowed hard. He looked from Rachel to Naomi and back again. The confidence that had carried him through the afternoon was gone. In its place sat uncertainty. Rachel continued. Multiple policy violations have been confirmed. Customer profiling, failure to provide equal service, misuse of managerial authority, conduct inconsistent with company standards. Several employees lowered their eyes. Others stared at Ethan. Some looked shocked. Others looked unsurprised. Naomi remained calm. She had not raised her voice once. She had not demanded respect. She had simply allowed people to reveal themselves. Rachel tapped the screen again. There is more. The words seemed to tighten the air. Additional records appeared. Previous customer complaints. Internal notes. Escalated concerns that had never been properly addressed. A pattern emerged. Not one incident. Not one mistake. A pattern. Ethan looked as though he wanted to explain himself, but every explanation seemed to vanish before reaching his lips. Emily stood quietly near the register. She felt relief mixed with sadness. Relief because the truth was finally visible. Sadness because it had taken this much for people to listen. Naomi turned toward the staff. This company was built on trust, she said. Not appearances. Not assumptions. Trust. Her voice carried through every corner of the showroom. Customers listened. Employees listened. Even the soft music seemed to fade behind her words. Rachel received another notification. She reviewed it briefly before looking up. Corporate Human Resources has completed its recommendation. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Rachel continued. Effective immediately, Ethan Caldwell's employment is terminated. The sentence landed with remarkable simplicity. No shouting. No drama. Just consequences. Ethan closed his eyes for a moment. Around the showroom, several employees exchanged stunned glances. A few customers quietly nodded. Rachel continued reading. Access privileges revoked. Management credentials disabled. Company systems locked. At almost the same moment, Ethan's work phone emitted a short notification tone. Then another. Then silence. The systems had already responded. Naomi watched without satisfaction or anger. Only resolve. This was never about revenge. It was about standards. Rachel looked around the room. The remaining staff will participate in a full operational review beginning tomorrow morning. Several employees nodded immediately. Emily felt tension leave her shoulders for the first time all afternoon. The store seemed different now. Lighter. As though something heavy had finally been removed. Customers began speaking again. Quietly at first. Then more openly. One man near the consultation area shook his head and said, "She handled that with more grace than I could have." Another customer agreed. Naomi glanced around the showroom she had spent years building. The displays remained beautiful. The products remained exceptional. But the most important thing being restored that afternoon was not the store. It was the standard behind it. And as Ethan slowly turned toward the exit, Naomi knew the final lesson had not yet been spoken. The showroom felt different now. Not quieter. Clearer. The tension that had filled the room for the past hour had finally given way to something else. Understanding. Customers slowly returned their attention to the displays, but many still glanced toward Naomi. They had witnessed more than a management decision. They had witnessed a standard being defended in real time. Rachel finished documenting the final compliance notes and stepped aside. The operational review would continue. Reports would be filed. Policies would be strengthened. But those tasks belonged to tomorrow. Today belonged to a lesson. Naomi walked slowly toward the center of the showroom. The same place where she had first been told she did not belong. The same place where assumptions had spoken louder than facts. The same place where silence had been mistaken for weakness. Employees gathered nearby. Some looked nervous. Some looked thoughtful. Emily stood among them. Naomi's eyes moved across the room. She saw concern. She saw relief. Most importantly, she saw people paying attention. When I started this company, she said calmly, I could not afford the jewelry we sold. I could barely afford the rent on my first office. The room listened carefully. What I did have was a belief that every customer deserves respect before they ever spend a dollar. Several employees nodded. Naomi continued, luxury is not created by diamonds. It is not created by marble floors. It is not created by beautiful lighting or expensive displays. She glanced around the showroom. Those things matter, but they are not what people remember. Her voice remained steady. People remember how they were treated. The words settled over the room. No one interrupted. No one looked away. Naomi turned slightly toward Emily. A company survives because people choose integrity when it is uncomfortable. Emily felt her eyes widen. She understood exactly what Naomi meant. Naomi looked back at the rest of the team. Every person who walks through these doors deserves the same welcome. Not because of what they are wearing. Not because of what they might spend. Because dignity is not something customers earn from us. It is something we owe them from the moment they arrive. Even the customers listened now. One older gentleman quietly nodded in agreement. A woman near the engagement section smiled. Naomi took a slow breath. The memory of that 16-year-old girl standing inside a jewelry store in North Carolina briefly returned to her mind. The girl who had been judged before she was known. The girl who had promised herself she would build something better one day. Standing there now, she realized that promise had finally come full circle. She looked around the showroom one final time. The displays sparkled beneath the lights. The employees stood a little taller. The atmosphere felt lighter than it had all afternoon. Then Naomi spoke the final words. I did not raise my voice today. I raised the standard. The silence that followed felt powerful. Not because anyone was afraid to speak. Because there was nothing left to add. The lesson had already been delivered. And as the showroom slowly returned to normal, one truth remained brighter than every diamond in the building. Respect is always worth more than appearance, and character is the rarest jewel any company will ever possess.